the way in which we live nowadays is, if you're a believer, but especially if you're not a believer, so many concepts, ideas, etc., are going to owe something, positive, negatives, but it's going to owe something to a religious past. So you can't get away from it, and therefore philosophizing about religion, absolutely.
I mean to say that when people talk about religion, sometimes it's arguments that God exists and arguments that God doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And sometimes they treat it as though it's sort of just a sociological phenomenon, like it's almost something that should be fully analyzable with psychology. And I suppose I'm interested, I mean, you wrote a book about religion for atheists. And when you begin to approach a topic like that, are you approaching it as a philosophical question about truth claims or sort of a brain thing?
I don't want to limit, the applicability of philosophy to simply the truth claims of God's existence.
Right.
I think that's too narrow. And you say, well, there's the sociological other bit. Is that such a sociological? I mean, it depends how we're playing with words here. Is that the sociological bit? Could there be a philosophy where one explores notions of community? Is there a philosophy of ritual? Is there a philosophy of time? Is there a philosophy of travel, insofar as religions get us traveling? Is there a philosophy of architecture? Of course there is. So I think philosophy has not done its job when it's merely addressed the question of God's existence or non-existence. And I think this is part of the unfortunate narrowness of the curriculum when it comes to discussions of religion. That if you're discussing in a philosophy course religion, you will be circling around the question of God's existence or non-existence for what I believe to be too much time.
And what should people be circling around with as much enthusiasm?
They might be asking, what are the needs which religion serves? Which I don't think is a sociological question necessarily. It can be answered philosophically. What does the appetite for religion tell us? What are the drives towards religion?
I suppose you have views on what those drives are. I'm interested, given the plurality of religious beliefs, which seem to make contradictory truth claims, but at the same time seem to share something in common such that we can look everywhere and find religiosity in humans. That what are those universal factors that you think draw people to religiosity?
I mean, there are so many, but let's look at a concept like awe, A-W-E. It's really the notion of welcoming an encounter with our finitude, which normally our finitude is a sad thing. It's not something that we want to embrace. It doesn't seem to have any charge for us. In certain circumstances, under the aegis of what you can call religion, there is often an encounter with awe, and it's really to do with scale. The human being gets a new sense of themselves against a scale which is very different from the ordinary human scale in time, space, also potentially, eventually, wisdom, knowledge, etc. Words like mystery comes in, etc. So, I mean, philosophers of the 19th century were very interested in all of this. What do human beings encounter when they encounter the religious? What bits of themselves are brought into play, etc.? Much less popular questions now, but very necessary, I think.
What do you think changed? I mean, it does seem that now people are almost obsessed with that strictly truth claim related part of philosophy. Why did that happen?
This is speculation, and I won't know. I think that what made the 19th century such a ripe century for philosophical inquiry was that many of the people doing the best thinking were those who had themselves come from a religious background and had lost their faith or questioned their faith. So this was not disembodied philosophy. This was an anguished search for something. And if you look at Nietzsche, for example, the reason why Nietzsche's thoughts on religion are so fascinating is that, his father was a pastor. He himself started off religious. And, there's what you could call ambivalence. There's a fantastic degree of ambivalence, which makes for nuance. These people are all Kierkegaard. I mean, these people are philosophizing to save their lives, and their inquiry into religions are anything other than what you might call academic in the negative sense. And it gives the inquiry a real urgency.
You wrote Religion for Atheists. In part, it seems as a counter to the popular new atheism of the time that religion is evil and needs to be abandoned and all of this kind of stuff. And one of the things you pressed was that atheism shouldn't be where you end up. It's a starting point, and let's move forward from there. And I think at the time, there was this optimism that if we just sort of throw off the supernatural elements and just isolate the good bits, we can get our community spirit while also retaining a spiritual autonomy. A lot of people now think that atheism has kind of failed to deliver on that promise. I wonder if you agree with that sentiment so many years.
Look, I don't think that the impulses that went into religion, that animated religion for thousands of years, and that no longer animate it in many parts of the world, I don't think these things are going to disappear. They are very firmly lodged in our spirit. And I think we keep seeing in different ways, I wouldn't necessarily call them religious impulses, but neo-religious impulses, impulses that religions have drawn on, cropping up in other ways, in all sorts of ways, in environmental movements, in political movements, in lifestyle movements, in fashions, in music. We're never going to get away from this. It's just permanently rumbling around. The question is just whether we're inclined to draw connections between these things and a word like religion. I would encourage us to do so because it enriches what we're trying to do. I was just doing an event here, and someone was saying, what about communal living? This is in the context of a talk I gave on love. Someone was saying, what about communal living? Why are we placing all this emphasis on one person rather than the group? Now, religions has a lot to say about this, about communal living and eros and agape and the group versus the family, and I mean it's an enormous topic in Christianity and also in Buddhism, etc. It really helps to know your religious history when trying to investigate whether you should set up a flat share in Dalston. It deepens the sense, the resonance around what you might be trying to do.
To what extent do you think you can talk about religion or religiosity as a unified drive or spirit within people, given the variance of its expressions? It seems as loose a term as like politics or something.
See what you mean? Yes, and I think maybe it's wrong to appropriate it and say that thing is a religious impulse. What we want to say is that thing is part of the constituency of being human. It's existed since the year dot. It will continue to exist. What we might say is, for a long time, it flew under the banner of religion. For a long time, this side of human nature was enriched, deep and nuanced by thinkers who actively identified themselves as religious. So just to be aware of that. Is it actually a religious impulse? No. The William James idea, varieties of religious experience, sort of saying a certain kind of experience is religious per se, rather than no. Certain varieties of experience have been looked at by religion, lent names by religion. Do they belong to religion? No. I think that's a religious mindset. I don't think they belong to religion. Religion has simply hosted them for a long time.